Welcome to the JB Media Institute Digital Drop-In. This is Sarah, and I'm here with Justin as usual.
Hey Sarah, hey everybody, good afternoon.
So today we've got a pretty rich topic that we're going to talk about. And just as a reminder to everyone, you will get an email with a recording of this as well as a copy of the slides, which I'm going to share with you today. So don't feel like you have to try to write everything down or remember everything. Also, please keep in mind the chat lines are open. So as we move through talking about the different topics related to link building, I want you to feel free to chat in specific questions, and there should be time at the end for some Q&A. So I want to just, really open up to having any discussions that you'd like to have about this topic. I think it's a very rich topic. There are a lot of different things that we could discuss. In just 50 minutes, we kind of have to boil it down to things that I think are really valuable takeaways. But of course, there's many other things that we could be talking about in relationship to this. So please feel free to chat in, jump in, and provide your feedback. But we're going to go ahead and just start walking through the content, and I'll be monitoring as we go along. So again, we've had just a few more people join the call, so welcome. Today, our digital drop-in is about the truth about link building. So I want to start just by saying that the truth about link building is that it's not easy. It's a really involved and I feel somewhat complex approach to SEO that has to be addressed. And it's something that I think a lot of smaller businesses and especially nonprofits who have minimal time to spend on SEO, that they kind of skip over this part, right? Because it feels confusing and it is a lot of work. So most people, when we talk about search engine optimization, are very familiar with keyword content, keyword research, even doing a little bit of keyword architecture on their website. They understand the idea of creating regular content, but what kind of ends up in a mysterious ball is this idea of building links. And it's really changed over the years that I've been in the industry, where in the old days there was lots of different sort of little manual tasks that you could do, or even tasks that could be done by automated software. And a lot of those things now have gone away and are not as important or are not important at all as far as strategy is concerned. So for me, a good example would be when I started in search engine optimization, I was doing a lot of article syndication. What that meant was we were writing all sorts of keyword articles and then syndicating or publishing them on all sorts of different websites that were considered article websites. And when I first started out in the industry, this was a huge part of what I did. It's a huge part of what I sold as an SEO package. And a lot of the idea behind it was that the more that I published and syndicated the articles, the more links we would get. And I actually saw a ton of results from this in the early 2000s. It worked really well. And other things that are similar are directory listings, that kind of link building strategy. And all of those things over the years have really become something that Google would prefer that we don't do, because it creates, I think, a lot of junk content, a lot of junk links on the internet, which for them, the goal would be for things to be really relevant and not just to have a bunch of sort of links and content and websites that are only created for building links. So it's funny that I feel like this particular topic, it really speaks to the fact that what I used to sell people as an SEO professional is now a completely different animal. So I just wanted to point that out, because if you're not in the industry, you may not have been doing that 15 years ago. But if you were doing search engine optimization 15 years ago, you were doing a lot of these strategies to try to build as many links as possible. And that's really shifted. So Google basically says, in general, webmasters can improve the rank of their sites by increasing the number of high-quality links that link to their pages. So I think the key word there is high quality. That's why the things that we used to do don't really work anymore, and we've had to take this kind of new approach to link building. So the first thing that I want to talk about in relationship to link building is just essentially some basic concepts. And we're going to run through this pretty quick because I think it's fairly basic. But I think there are things that you want to be aware of that are really important to defining what makes a link worthwhile and where should you be spending your time. So link popularity is one of the factors that Google looks at. And of course, Google looks at many factors. So this is just one factor in a giant pile. But essentially, Google wants to look at each page and whether or not the links that are pointing to it are, what is the quality of them? What is the number of them? And so essentially link popularity in its essence refers to the number of backlinks, or what we call incoming links, that point to a given website or web page. So this is just something to be, like I said, familiar with, basics to be familiar with, because you may also hear about something called domain popularity. And so domain popularity really has to do with your .com and how popular that .com is. But link popularity really has to do with each page of the website being counted as an incoming link or a backlink.
Call recording is off.
So essentially it's, just kind of words that you're going to see pop up on a regular basis.
Uh-oh.
All right, so I believe we just had an issue with our electrical. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick test to make sure everybody can hear me. Yeah, we've got the other recorder on, so I'm not going to worry about join me at this time. But great. Okay, so everyone, we're not going to worry about the recording piece because we got a separate piece of software. But great. Okay, so everyone can still hear me. Awesome. Thank you guys.
That's great.
As Jenna just
fortunate.
as Jenna just pointed out, there's some power line work going on outside. So hopefully we will not run into this issue again. But again, just to kind of think about this, overall, each page of your website can have different incoming links. So every page has this opportunity to gain link popularity. Also, when you start looking into, and Mariah, I see your question, is domain popularity and domain authority the exact same thing? They're pretty close. I think domain popularity just has to do more with how many links are pointing at this one domain, at this website overall, right? So my domain can have 10,000 links, and that's going to affect my domain popularity. Domain authority includes a lot of other things as well. And domain authority is basically depends on the tool that you're using. They all define it a little bit differently. So it may include, the different types of keywords that you're showing up for. It won't just include the backlinks. So does that make sense? Domain authority, I think, includes domain popularity, but it also includes other things that would contribute to that domain authority. So let me know if that's not clear and we can keep talking about it. Yeah, awesome. So another thing to think about in the basics, there's a right way and a wrong way, however, to build links to your site. If you care about the long-term viability of your site and business, you should only engage in natural link building, meaning the process of earning links rather than buying them or otherwise achieving them through manipulative tactics. So this statement from WordStream, I think, was really something that happened because of Google. So Google was really the leader in pushing us towards natural or earned link building. They wanted people to stop purchasing links from companies. So again, in the old days, companies would say, pay us $300 a month and we'll give you 5,000 links a month or something of that nature. And, overall, Google's assessment of that was if you can buy the links, then your website actually doesn't have to be that authoritative and it doesn't have to deserve to improve its rankings. It just you have to have enough money to purchase it. So what they're really looking for is for your website to be really great, for the content on the pages to be really great. And because of that, other people link to your website or to your web pages individually because they feel there is something of value there. So that's just something to think about, right? That we don't want to try to trick the search engines into believing that our website is authoritative. We want to make sure that we really do have an authoritative website, whether it's for one niche topic or for 100 different topics, right? Over time, as you optimize your website and build your website's authority, it's really important that it be authentic and legitimate, instead of looking for some formula or trick or way around it. And that's something that over time, Google, especially, like I said, has been a pretty harsh taskmaster about. So natural links, essentially, just to clearly define them, a natural link is one that occurs organically. So natural links don't have tracking built to them. They're not cookied. They're not advertising links. They don't exist within sponsored or paid content. And they don't redirect through JavaScript and other types of monetization tools. So the idea really is that the natural links happen because your website or the content on your website is basically amazing, and people want to share your website as a reference, so they link over to it. Typically, too, natural links, we're going to see they reference sort of something specific on the website. So even though there's a lot of different natural links that you can build that will link to your homepage, there's also a ton of opportunities for natural links to occur to internal pages of your website. So it's not just about, listing your business somewhere and having a link that goes to your homepage. It's about really developing content on your website and getting additional links because of that content. And you'll see the words natural and earned interchanged, and that's because really what Google wants to see is that you've done the work, right? You've done the work on the content to make it so worthwhile that your website deserves to get these additional incoming links, and because of that deserves to get additional rankings potentially. So the goal is to kind of earn your position in the search engines, and you do that not just through your content but also through the link building process. And then, of course, for those of you who are newer, there's sort of a conversation about internal versus external links. And internal links can have value on your website. In my mind, it's sort of the lowest hanging fruit, especially if you're running your own website or DIYing it. Essentially, you can create just stronger keyword architecture. And we're not going to get into this too much, but I wanted to just have this slide so you can understand that the keyword architecture of your website has to do with not just the keyword content that you've created, but how the pages of your website interlink, which is related basically to the usability or the flow that you are giving people as they move through your content. So, essentially, this is part of it as well, even though what we're talking about today is really incoming backlinks and building those, because I think those are the harder things to create and build over time, right? This is kind of the easy thing that we can all do, which is do our keyword research, better understand our audiences, and build a website that really caters to the needs and wants and desires of our audiences and give them excellent content that's easy to navigate and use. So we don't want to leave this out, though, because internal linking is another big factor in how well your website does. So high quality links are the name of the game. That is really what we want to create over time. And I will say we're going to talk about this in more detail in a moment, but it is difficult when you have a much larger competitor out there and they have many more links that are high quality. Sometimes you realize when you're doing the research that we'll talk about, it's hard to remove those people because it'll take you a long time to build these high quality links. So this is where any time that you can make headway on this, I think it's worthwhile, whether it's one link or 20 links or whatever it is. And high quality links come in different kind of variations. So you can have links that are what I would consider high impact, which means they're super high quality, and one link becomes extremely valuable in building your authority. Other links, in my mind, might be medium impact, right? So they're worthwhile, but they are not as strong because the quality is not as high. They haven't met as many different criteria. So in general, high quality pages, this are basically how you are going to define the links. So when we're talking about link building, we're talking about backlinks or incoming links, and the pages that those links come from need to be high quality. That's how the link becomes more impactful. So essentially, high quality pages that can link to you are going to have consistent traffic, and the people who visit the page are going to stay on the page for a decent amount of time. They're going to have content that's really well written and easy to use and navigate and view. That means it loads fast, and there's not a bunch of grammatical errors and things like that. pages that already are ranking out there for specific keywords in different niches and different target audiences. The higher the pages that link to you rank, the more high quality they are and the more impact they're going to have. Offer value to visitors through services or thought leadership. So again, really giving people something that's beneficial to them, that's going to solve a problem, answer a question. This is sometimes what makes your web page or piece of content really shareable. And the more valuable it is, the more it gets shared, the more backlinks you accumulate from different websites. High quality pages are considered authoritative or expert in an industry. So sometimes you might be targeting links from very specific pages on a website. Again, it might not be their homepage, but it might be a page that is specifically about what your products and services relate to. And that's actually going to improve the quality of the link. And then any page that already has a lot of quality backlinks itself, when it links to your website or web page, that improves the impact or creates a more high quality link. So what you really want to do is get links from websites and pages on websites that are already doing well, that already have traffic, that are already getting attention, because they are going to help boost your authority overall. So if we look at authority in general, one thing we want to pay attention to, because we're going to see this in a lot of the tools if you use them, domain authority. Again, this is a metric that was created by Moz in a lot of ways, Moz.com. And now there's a ton of other sites and tools out there, and they have their own version of domain authority. And basically what this means is how rankable is the website. So one of the things that you can do when you are putting together a list of potential websites that you'd like to have links on is to look at what that website's domain authority is. If it's high, then the link you get from that website will be more high quality. And then, of course, you've also got page authority. So domain authority is sort of similar to what we talked about with link popularity. Page authority is about the singular page on the website and how authoritative it is compared to the domain or the .com and how authoritative that is. So a few tools where you would see these things being talked about are the hrefs, especially the backlink checker there. Moz, again, will have this type of language. Some free tools that you can use just to look at your backlinks that'll give you very basic information about how many you have are the Google Search Console and Monitor Backlinks, which is free. So you can dig into those to explore more. And then my top 5 paid tools after, many years of studying the different tools that are out there that you can pay for, are basically these 5. And, I've done a lot of research from different SEO experts about which ones they like. There's a lot of preferences. I know the JV Media Group uses Ahrefs a lot, and there's a lot of arguments for why their data is more solid.
It seems like they have a little bit deeper index now.
They're actually known for that, is like having that deeper index. Mm-hmm. So the truth is everybody's got their preference on these tools. I'm still a big fan of Moz. Although, as Justin just pointed out, I think sometimes the data that they pull back is not as robust as, let's say, Ahrefs is. SEMrush has been around a long time, and so they actually have a pretty in-depth tool set for evaluating backlinks, helping you figure out what types of high-quality websites you might want to attempt to get links on. But all of these are going to have their own version of calculating domain authority, link popularity. You're going to see those phrases mixed in quite a bit. So getting more into the tactics, I loved this quote from a recent Forbes article that was, sadly, much of the content being published is simply not worth linking to. 75% of it is getting 0 inbound links. So forget the more is better approach to content. If you want links, go with quality instead. So this is something that I think is the biggest change that has happened in the years that I've been doing this work. It really used to be more about getting as many links as you could and proving by the high number of links that you had that you deserve to rank higher and have more authority. And that's something where we've seen literally like a 180 flip. So now it's really about not just cranking out half done or half decent content and trying to get people to share it and link to it, but really figuring out what content is going to be really powerful. Because I feel like there's times where you could write maybe 10, sort of blogs, pretty simple, without a lot of effort, and put those up. they're not going to get shared, they're not going to get the backlinks. You could spend maybe that same amount of time writing one really good piece of content that isn't already out there in the marketplace and get a ton of links because of the quality of that piece. So do you want to talk a little bit about content strategy, Justin, and just how you guys kind of apply this? I feel like this is something that the agency really focuses on.
Yeah, it is something we focus on, but it also can be difficult to convince clients to invest in the long form 10x style content. What I mean by 10x, it's a industry term that I think was generated by the guy who founded Moz, Rand Fishkin. I'm not sure if he's the first person to use it, but he's definitely someone who's pushed that topic. Is the idea of creating content that is 10 times better than what's out there on the subject matter, on whatever keyword or topic you're trying to focus on. And the thought being is that if you create content that's that good, other people will not try to match you, they'll just link to you as a resource. Mm-hmm. And you will impress the search engines with time on site and engagement metrics, because if you create a really great resource, people will spend a lot of time on it. They'll hopefully share it through different channels that create other user indications of the content strong, like social sharing is an indication. Search rankings will happen from that type of work. So it can be difficult to justify the amount of time and energy necessary to put those kind of pieces together when you're hiring someone else to do it. And we're always usually on the hiring end, although sometimes we're also just creating strategy for clients to implement themselves, and we always do a balance, because it can take 3 or 4 months to put together something that can be at this quality. Mm-hmm. And you have to produce content more frequently than that for a variety of reasons. You got to feed your social media, you got to feed your email, and so there's different ways to think about it. One is to create a series of content as individual blog posts, and then when you have all the base materials built, merge them together and add additional graphics or research or data-driven insights to make something that is better than the sum of its parts, and then promote that as your major content accomplishment with its own landing page. Go back to those original blog posts and put a feature saying, like, to learn more about this subject, check out our comprehensive guide on the topic, and the guide is the larger resource. So you don't have to start with the ambitious goal of creating it from scratch. You can build the component pieces as different blogs or different infographics, or a combination of blogs, infographics, and videos that you publish separately, and then you pull them together and create that. So, like, for example, right now I'm working on a piece that would be, I'm hoping it'll be something that'll be one of the better pieces of content on the internet about ethical marketing. And I'm doing it with a partner called Acumen, and today we're actually, we published a short blog post about the main questions people should be thinking about when they consider their ethics of their marketing, and it didn't have the answers in the blog. So during we're doing a webinar today, which is just basically a screen share similar to what we're doing right now on this call, and that will be an hour long, and it'll be a 20 to 30 slide presentation. And then we're going to work from what we talked about in the webinar to create what I think will be a 2,000 to 4,000 word article on their website, which will hopefully be one of the best, most up-to-date pieces of content on the subject matter. And that would be the end game, is that would rank hopefully in search engines for that keyword within a few months.
No, that's awesome. And I think, too, one of the things that your agency does well, because I've worked with Mandy quite a bit, who, is sort of the senior brand journalist here, and she does a lot of the blogging content for clients. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things that I see her spend a lot of time on is that quality of the blog posts. Really, if you're going to blog regularly, to really think about that bigger picture, which is what you're talking about, the overall strategy. And so how can that maybe simpler content that you're putting out be building on something, and also really establishing, like I said, that thought leadership that we talked about a moment ago, or that expertise. And so I think having that perspective, like you're talking about, of sort of that, how does all the content work together to establish authority around something, I think is a really strong point to make, because you can get, when you have that bigger strategy around your content marketing, you're able to actually get maybe even more links, because you might get links to some of those simpler blogs. You might get links to the webinar page when you post it, and then eventually you'll get links to that bigger article that's on the website, and all of that is going to help reinforce the authority that you have around that topic. So talking about tactical stuff related to what Justin's talking about, I wanted to boil it down to a few strategies that I think really work. So one, of course, is public relations. Public relations has become a big part of link building in the SEO world. And mainly it's because if we talk about high quality websites, media websites, online magazines that are really popular, local newspaper websites, all of those different things, when they write an article about your business or product or service or brand and they link back to your website, those links can be higher impact because of the quality of those websites. So a lot of times with students, one of the things I talk about in the beginning is, what are the top 20 websites you'd like to get listed on and get a link from? Right? So just dream big is what I tell the students sometimes. We're going to talk about how to refine this into something realistic that you can attain. But from a PR perspective, let's just think big, right? So we've had a student in the past, where there's maybe one magazine nationally that they love to be in and get coverage. So this is where I like to let us dream a little bit about what's possible, right? And of course, in the PR world, we're not just talking about traditional media and journalism, we're also talking about influencers. We're talking about bloggers. We may be talking about some things that are in print or radio or TV. We also might be talking about online publications. So really think about your audiences. Where are they spending their time? Who do they trust? And what would really make a huge impact for you if you were talked about by those websites and then linked to? Make sure that these top 20 websites, again, if you look at the tools I shared, you can go in on a lot of those tools and test other websites to see which ones have the highest domain authority. So that's a good note to make. When I make this list of 20 websites that we'd really like to be on, I then actually go through and want to put the domain authority in there. I can even create a free account on Moz or do a 7-day trial with Ahrefs and run a lot of these kind of data sets for different websites that we're interested in without permanently signing on to a monthly fee. And then listen carefully, identify the best contact, and design story pitches for the audiences you want to reach. So if you're going to reach out to some of these influencers, bloggers, or journalists, really pay attention to who they are, who they're reaching, what are they talking about on a regular basis, how can you get in contact with them? Is it better to email? Is it better to maybe send them a tweet first? Where do you see them interacting the most, and how can you meet them where they're at? That's going to help you really make a connection. The second strategy that I think a lot of different businesses and organizations are doing well on is really putting together, from an SEO perspective, where are your competitors listed that you are not listed? So this is where you can go in and really study other direct competitors of yours by looking at their websites and kind of finding out what links they have pointing to their websites, or even just other industry leaders, other people in the market that you really appreciate that are selling something similar. Use these SEO tools to really find out, what links do those websites have that are really strong, and is there a way for you to potentially get listed on those same websites? So a lot of times this competitor research helps as well, because you're going to start to be able to track out and see how many backlinks do your competitors have. And it's really important to be aware of that, because if you're one of your main competitors that's ranking at the top of Google has 80,000 links to their website and you have 240, that's quite a big leap from one to the other. And so it's just going to help you understand a realistic expectation of where your website is sitting next to other websites that are similar. Once you kind of look, and you might start with only 2 or 3 of these in the beginning, you're not going to be able to do all this research necessarily in one sitting. So you might start with your top 3 competitors and really look at, what websites are they listed on, and out of that list, which ones are the most authoritative. right? So do you have a competitor that was featured in Forbes magazine? If you're local to Asheville, has your competitor been talked about in the Citizen Times? And what can you do to potentially get coverage by that same website or blogger or influencer or media? Or is this somehow an opportunity to say, hey, we see that you have this list of people who provide this service and we're not on it. We'd love for you to check out what we do, right? So you can, find out basically why are they talking about these other companies? What does the pitch seem to be for those companies to get this type of coverage? And is there a way for you to potentially step in and get similar coverage as well, or at least be added to a list of recommendations or suggestions? And Justin, I know when Leah Quintal was working here, this was something that she and I talked about a lot and that she looked at a lot, was just where were these opportunities potentially to gain some attention. Are you guys still kind of focusing on this, or I'm just curious, like...
It's been a little bit less of a focus because we haven't had as many projects where this approach made a lot of sense in the last couple of months. But that said, it's still useful. One strategy that we've deployed in this area before is using something called link triangulation, where you put in, there's tools within Ahrefs and Moz where you can put in competitor websites in your own site, and it'll give you a list of sites that link to both of them but not you, or just one and not you. And what that often most often returns is like list articles where industry partners or industry companies are listed, but you somehow didn't make the list. And if you're doing great content or great work in your industry, you should be listed. And if it's a list that's sort of like supposed to be comprehensive, then the thought is that you don't have to do anything to, differently to ask to be linked. And that's sort of the low hanging fruit, so to speak, or like easy effort way to build links. So in theory, if you think you should be on the list, all you really have to do is send a professional and well-written email explaining, your credentials of why you should be on the list, and send them everything that they need to add you to the list. So if they have a listing with a description and a link and an image, go ahead and put that together and write it and send it to them and say, here's what we feel how we feel we should be listed compared to what you have. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it might be, I've used this strategy in the past when I used to run a site called Asheville Now, and we'd always would look at like who was linking to Asheville.com and Romantic Asheville. A lot of times it was like small tourism businesses like bed and breakfast, and they would have a list of like Asheville websites, and it would be sometimes just a bullet list of 3 to 5. And we're like, hey, can you add us to the list? And in that case, we had something to barter with them. So we would say, we'll give you an upgraded listing on our site if you put the link on yours, or we'll give you an ad for a few months on the site if you go ahead and take the effort to put the link up. And I spent months doing that type of outreach. And for the most high-profile links, the sites that had the highest domain authority, I would go to the point of making phone calls. I would phone call. I'd follow up if I hadn't heard back. Some of the things you're going to talk about later is I'd track really well who I'd reached out to, what they had said. If they said they would do it, then I would follow up and remind them if they hadn't done it within a certain amount of time. In this case, we had something to trade, so they weren't going to get what we offered until the link was put up. Mm-hmm. That gave them a little bit more incentive to do it. Because one of the biggest challenges of link building is often you have to get the approval from someone who might not necessarily be able to make the change. And sometimes it means they have to ask someone who they have to pay, who's not on their payroll, like a webmaster or an outside person, to do something on their website, which doesn't really benefit their business at all. Mm-hmm. So getting them to do that is the hard part. And if you're talking about the author of a blog that listed your competitors, that's easy because they can do it themselves. But you're talking about a business owner who has a list of related companies on their site. You might be talking to the owner of the company who may not be able to make the change that they're asking to be made.
No, totally. I think one of the biggest things about this particular part of the strategy is, like I said, you're not going for just the quantity of links, you're going for the quality of links. And so these the PR strategy and this strategy, I think, are really focused on spending the time you need to identify where would you really put your energy, right? So as Justin pointed out, this stuff can be really time consuming, and then you can get no result from it. So to me, I really want to identify, like, what are the best websites that my competitors are on? Does it look like I have the opportunity to kind of be listed on the same website, or to pitch the same person to talk about our products and services the same way they talked about one of our competitors? And then again, I might boil this down just to, a top kind of 3 to 5 things maximum to work with first. Because if I can get a small number of the really high quality links, that will have an equal amount of impact to getting a large number of lower quality links. So to me, it's worth it to spend a little bit of time kind of looking at your competitors, looking where they're, getting their links from, and then deciding from there what really applies to you, what really is going to get you in front of the right audience, what has the highest domain authority, and using that as a way to prioritize. So the next part of the SEO strategy that I think is working for a lot of people is what we call local citations, and that is related to local search engine optimization. This also relates to a lot of sites out there where you would sign up and you would have the opportunity to get reviews. So review sites and local citations are considered very related, and local, I think SEO comes down to 2 veins. It comes down to regional, which is location based, or it comes down to industry. So typically local citations are probably easiest for any business that has a brick and mortar location and has a physical address that they can use. If you don't have that, there are going to be a portion of citations and review sites that aren't based on your physical address, but they're based on the industry that you're in. But this is sort of where we've evolved from the old school version of directory listings into something new, which is essentially a way for you to get your business listed on relevant websites that focus in on audiences that care about either the area that you're particularly in, or, like I said, the industry, the products or services specifically that you offer. And so a lot of these are going to talk to either regional niches or industry niches when you get listed on them. And many of them are going to include reviews or star ratings or something of that nature. So you have to be prepared to handle that and be okay with people, giving you feedback and things like that. Again, I think the amount of options you have here is lower if you don't have a physical address. But these links can be really valuable because sometimes the websites that offer these local citations actually have a lot of traffic, and they have consistent traffic with people who are looking for different services, specifically, like I said, in an area or an industry. Content marketing overall is also becoming, I think, a huge part of basically what link building is about. So giving people a reason to link to your website has a lot to do with just the quality of the content. And we talked about that before. If you can come up with different things that really have value to people, it's going to make them more shareable. If you can especially identify things that have not been done before, you have an opportunity to potentially kind of step out, as Justin was talking about with the idea of ethical marketing, step out into a topic that nobody has kind of dominated as the leader. Of course, if you want to compete with your competitors, you can also try to just outdo them in an amazing piece of content. But a lot of times looking for those opportunities where you won't have to compete so heavily can just make things a lot easier. So really you want to think about what content hasn't been done before, how can you help your audiences solve a problem or deal with an issue, who can guest write or create video content that can be shared on other websites. So I know Mandy does for the agency some guest blogging type services, and so how can you figure out a way for someone on your team or yourself to get featured on other websites by what Justin kind of talked about, by having this exchange or incentive. If you give us a link on your website, we'll provide this content to your blog on a regular basis. You can negotiate those kind of partnerships. Think about what your audiences think is shareable, right? So what is something that's going to be so important to them, something they really need, it's going to make them want to tell other people about it. To me, that's how we get more and more links over time, is by being incredibly shareable. We often think about shareability as social media, but I think it actually has a lot to do with whether or not people would share links to the pages of your website. And then I think overall, one of the other things you can consider is what types of content will make people's lives easier. So what types of content will really provide a solution or an answer that literally saves time or saves steps or just makes people's lives easier? That kind of stuff, people love to share it and link to it over time. So again, just going back to a list of relatable tools, and these are just sort of my top 5, but when it comes to content marketing specifically, if you're building a lot of different pieces of content, including blogs or ebooks or articles on your website or videos, you want to be able to track out how well that content is doing and see not just how many times it's getting shared on social media, but how many times it's getting shared across the web and people are linking to it. So I know the agency has used BuzzSumo a lot. BuzzSumo is well loved in our industry. It's not the cheapest tool in the world, but it is very powerful for tracking the popularity of your content and all the different ways that it can be making an impact. These other ones, I think, are some of the ones that I find are really also loved by other people in our industry. And Ahrefs, which is a really great tool, they have their own version called the Content Explorer, which allows you to sort of dig into things from a BuzzSumo style approach, and not just use their typical SEO and backlinking kind of tools. But a lot of these are well tested and they all have value. You might want to test them out to see which ones you appreciate or which ones feel the most natural and understandable to you. And then the last thing I just want to kind of touch on is really making sure that you protect your website from antiquated techniques. So Google looks at a lot of links and then decides to discount them because the algorithm believes that they're not good. You can have thousands of links that then Google will basically ignore because of the low quality that it identifies. And it could be that those links are on a link farm. So a website that has nothing but thousands of links on it means low quality. If it's on website pages where the content is actually just poor, bad grammar, people don't spend any time on the website, there's low website traffic, all of those things are going to basically identify the link that you have as low quality. So it's great if you have friends that will link to you, but it does matter how awesome their websites are. Even when you're looking at your competitors and where they're listed, I would say, really staying away from anything that looks kind of spammy or kind of link farmy, where you've just got a long list of like 150 resources and it's like bullet points. Those kind of things to me are older and antiquated. And this comes down to basically what Google calls EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So they are really looking to kind of remove sites from the results that don't meet these standards. And so getting links from websites that don't have that good expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, to me, when you get those links, they can actually sometimes hurt you in the long run rather than help you. So you want to really think about that and, spend that time evaluating the quality of what you're getting there. So a few tips just to protect yourself. Don't buy links. Test and confirm that your website is useful. If you're not doing page speed tests, if you've never used Hotjar to test whether or not people are clicking and things like that, if you're not looking at Google Analytics to see how long people stick around, start doing that stuff because the usability of your website is incredibly important. Use a tool to look at your link stats, even if it's just the simplest version of the Google Search Console so that you can see the numbers, and then using Google Analytics to see how many referral links you have and are driving click-throughs. Understand where you are in this world and be able to set some specific goals around the growth that you want to see or the increase you want to see. Make sure the links come from truly relevant websites. So websites that link to you should be authoritative around something related to what you do, and they will have a bigger impact, right? So it's great if Justin's website about digital marketing gets links from a bunch of plumbing websites, but the relevancy of that is very low, and so that's going to cause those links to have less impact in a lot of ways. There would be a higher impact if the JV Media Group website got a bunch of links from, let's say, social enterprise business groups and other types of websites that had to do with entrepreneurship and things like that, because those are relatable topics to the type of marketing keywords that the JV Media Group website would want to show up for. And then try to avoid things like, spammy tactics, blog comments, automated backlinks, lots of links in a footer. All of those strategies can still work in minor ways, but can be difficult and cause problems. So I see a couple questions here, and it's perfect timing. I've noticed we've started getting referral traffic from these junk sites you mentioned. The traffic is very low, but we didn't ask for this. It sounds like we'll get dinged by Google for having these links. If so, what can we do to remediate it? So that's a great question. Hopefully if the numbers are not that high, then you should be fine. I mean, I feel like Google is not going to start paying attention until you have hundreds of these links pointing at your website. So if the number is small, then I don't think you're in danger at all of having negative impacts, but it is good to take a look at these things. If possible, when you look into Google Analytics and you click on those links, eventually you can click in, hopefully view the page where the link is coming from. You can basically see if there's a way to understand how your website got listed there. Sometimes there are local citations and websites out there that will scrape your information from other websites like Google My Business, and they'll place your information there. So as long as it's accurate, that's not a big deal. But from there, you can see if you are able to request that they take that link down. Sometimes you're going to see when you click on that page, you can't see a link to your website. So that's where you run into issues of understanding where is that link coming from. And again, I think if you are, if you've only got 10 to 20 of these, then I wouldn't worry about it too much. If the number starts rising, then you want to be concerned. And like I said, start to see, what is going on with this. Do you have we have another question, Justin, but do you have any feedback on that? I mean, we've all seen this in analytics where you basically have these
referral
links.
spam, you mean? Or, yeah. I mean, there are different types. Referral spam is one thing, but also getting links from low quality websites is another. I mean, at its most extreme form, it's possible that competitors can actually sign you up for really bad linking schemes, and that's like the most unethical type of counter, like kind of black hat SEO, where you try to get your opponents or your competitors penalized. But most of the time, it's just referral spam, which actually is. It's a way to get webmasters to click on links inside of analytics. Those aren't really actually links to your site most of the time. It appears as if they are, but they don't actually exist.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so if you click into them, you don't get an understanding. You can't remediate anything because you don't know what it is. So yeah, I think referral spam, just so you know, is something that often happens to people. And there's a way that you would need to filter that out of your Google Analytics.
Yeah.
And there's, that's a much bigger topic that we can't cover today. But we've actually talked about that in past digital drop-ins. So feel free to email me and I can send you some information if you feel like the numbers are getting really high and it's referral spam. Because that would be different. Sometimes you just have links from websites that you don't really know how you got there. Like I said, that can be scraping and other things. But if the numbers go up, be aware of that. And Tammy, I see your question. How does it work in my industry if my industry does not get lots of traffic as a general rule? To have 5 people look at my website in a week would be really good traffic. I'm not sure what you mean by how does it work. I mean, in that case, then you might not have to spend that much time on link building. You could get a small number of really good links and it would drive a lot more traffic to your website. And you'd be getting maybe 10 people a week looking at it, and that would be exceptional. So, every business is a little different on what their goals are. Again, if you want to establish your website as more authoritative from an SEO perspective, the more links you can get, the more authoritative you'll be, even if you're in a very small niche. So the great thing is if you're in a small niche, then you should be able to increase your rankings much more easily, potentially. And it depends on whether or not you have any other competition out there for what you're doing. So does that make sense? I mean, it still works the same. I think you just scale down how you have to do it. And then I see this last question, and Tammy, let me know if you need more clarity on that. And then I see this last question, can you give me examples of local citations? Yes, Google local listings, which are Google My Business, Yelp, TripAdvisor. If you were in the restaurant business, things like Urban Spoon. So all of those things qualify as local citations. And if you used any local tools, you'd find there's many different industry ones and areas for digging in. Like I said, off the top of my head, the only one I can come up with is like for restaurants, there's a lot of specific industry stuff, right? So like Urban Spoon is one of them. That's an example. You know, I don't know what industry you're in, but like you have to research that stuff. I don't really know exactly what they would be off the top of my head. However, if you looked at like Moz Local or you looked at Bright Local, they have more comprehensive listings where you can get sort of lists based on your region or based on your industry. But Viewer 21, if you are in a certain industry, let me know, like, and I can see if I can think of any. Like, are you in doing something specific? I might be able to give you an example. So I've given you guys some homework here as we wrap up as far as strategically talking, just some steps, you know, for what you can do to get started with this and take what we are suggesting and actually apply it. Keep in mind that if you want to do link building for SEO, you really need to make sure that you've completed keyword research and things like that, and figured out what the real architecture of your website is. So link building doesn't work as well if you don't do that other piece of the SEO. And of course, as Justin said, keeping detailed tracking of what you're doing is really valuable. And again, Viewer 21, if you want to tell me the industry you're in, I might be able to make some recommendations. Thank you guys so much for being here. But you can click on all the different tools. Feel free to email me with any questions that you have about these. I am very glad to answer questions about the tools. I've used many of them. And again, you can find out more about the Institute as well when you receive this PDF. But overall, we really appreciate everyone being here. And our contact information is here. I wanted to invite everyone today in this last couple minutes. If you have topics that you'd like us to cover in a future digital drop-in, I'm making our schedule for 2019. So I would love it if you would send me an email. Let me know what you'd like us to dig into deeper, and we're glad to do that. But thank you all so much. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for putting this together. I've had a busy week trying to prepare for my big webinar this afternoon, so I appreciate your work on this.
And thank you guys so much for all the great comments. I appreciate it. I'm glad this was helpful. And like I said, just keep in touch and let me know how we can support you in the future. Have a great day.